All right, so one of the things that we do a lot on our permaculture homestead is cooking. And I think that my kids have never, maybe Naomi's had it once, had a drink of commercial kind of soda or pop. For lots of good reasons. Number one, they're loaded with high fructose corn syrup, and they're just not good for you. They're just horrible. Anyways, I don't need to wax on how bad that is. I'm sure everybody knows that out there if you're watching this channel. But it's not really fair to them to take away the enjoyment of drinking that kind of beverage. And so we actually make our own beverages here. And so today I want to make a water kefir soda. And I just invented this year. And not the water kefir itself, but this type of soda. And so what we've been doing is making something called a sea buckthorn water kefir soda, and it is unbelievable. If you've ever had sea buckthorn is basically like the orange of the north. They're really tiny little berries, and they literally taste like orange juice when you crush them, but a little bit more tart. And if you do a quick Google search on sea buckthorn, you'll find that they are one of the most potent superfoods that we can grow up here. The berries have omega fatty acids in them, and I think they've got some really novel fatty acids that you can't get anywhere else. The leaves themselves are incredibly nutritious. Man, I wish YouTube knew how to allow me to put this incredible liquid through the video camera. It is just unbelievable. It's like, as much as I don't really like C+, actually, it would be like, it almost tastes like C+, but it doesn't feel like it's going to kill you. Yeah. And actually, if you do a bit of a Google search both on sea buckthorn leaves, sea buckthorn berries, and water kefir, you'll find that it is an incredible elixir. I can't remember all the properties of these leaves, but I know that at our local organic grocery store, they sell for about 17 bucks an ounce, so they're very valuable. Sea buckthorn is a nitrogen fixer. It's a pioneer species, so it grows like a weed. The berries are loaded with all sorts of antioxidants. One of the most potent antioxidants that you can actually get from a berry in our climate. These are frozen. One of the things that people get really upset about with sea buckthorn is that it's really hard to harvest, and it's hard to harvest if you don't know what you're doing. So I said earlier that it's a pioneer species. It's a fast carbon pathway, which means that usually means that it will be able to be coppiced. So you can cut it, and then it'll grow back again. And so the way that you harvest this is you actually cut all the branches with berries off, which is this year's wood. So the wood that grows this year is the one that bears the fruit. And you take the entire branch, which is covered in thorns and not very nice to pick on. And the berries themselves, one of the reasons it's so hard is the berries actually stick to the wood. They do that because they want to ferment. The seeds will not become viable until they've fermented. And so they stick to the wood all winter long, and then some bird will come along at the end of the winter, they'll eat them, fly away and poop them out somewhere, and then that seed will be a viable sea buckthorn seed. So the way to get them off the branch is to mimic winter. So you take those branches, you put them into a chest freezer, and as a result, the berries freeze, the leaves freeze, and then you literally take the branch and you bang it against the freezer wall, and all the leaves and berries fall off. Then you take the branches out, you burn them, or do whatever you want to do with them, compost them, shred them, and then you scoop out all the leaves and the berries out of the freezer, and you get a big box fan, and then the box fan basically blows air, and you pour the berries and the leaves in the box fan, and the leaves blow away and the berries go straight down because the leaves are light and the berries are heavy. And then you end up with this. Now, it's not a perfect process, so you still end up with some debris in there that you may not want to eat with your ice cream or your cream or whatever. But it's really lovely. I sometimes put this into hot cereal like oatmeal or whatever. But recently, I decided to try and make this sea buckthorn water kefir. And so the first step, it's a multi-step process, is you want to get a kettle of water going, and you want to make a tea. And this tea is going to represent 50% of the liquid that you put into these pop-top bottles. So 50% of this bottle is going to be the tea that you make. And you can make a root beer elixir, you can make cola, you can make mint, chamomile we've made. It doesn't really matter what you make. Whatever your base is, whatever flavor you want is what this tea ends up becoming. And so 50% of it's going to be the tea, and then 50% of it's going to be the water kefir, which I'll show you in a second. So once this thing is boiling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of these leaves to it. So there's probably about 3 or 4 cups of leaves. And you can change the amount of leaves and berries depending on how much flavor you want. And I'm probably going to add about half to 3/4 of this bag of berries. And I'm going to let it boil for probably 30 to 40 minutes until the berries have kind of exploded and have released their flavor into the water. And then after that has boiled for 30 to 45 minutes and you can tell that it's really well steeped, I'm going to let this sit overnight and cool down. And then in the morning we're going to, in stage 2, we're going to strain this, and I'll show you guys how to do it. And then what we're going to do is put it into our bottle filling mechanism and fill it all up. So we're going to let this come to a boil. I'm going to show you the water kefir next and how we propagate the water kefir so that it's ready to go for tomorrow. And then once we've filled the bottles, we put the water kefir with the tea in, then we let it sit on the counter for a couple of days, because the other thing that we put into this tea is we put a tablespoon of stevia leaf, which I'll show you in a sec, as well as 200 to 300 grams of honey, which is the sugar that basically provides the energy for the water kefir to carbonate the beverage. As the water kefir carbonates the beverage, it consumes the honey. And so in order to keep that sweet flavor of the soda, as the honey kind of disappears and turns into carbon dioxide, we like to put the stevia leaf in here because it continues to provide that sweetness that kids and even adults really like to drink without affecting the glycemic index in your body. Let's go take a look at the water kefir over there, and then you can see how that process works. In order to do homemaking, you've got to make it easy. If it's not easy, it's not going to happen. And so when we first started this, we would keep this in kind of a standard container, just a regular kind of mason jar, and we would use a funnel and like ladle it in. And I liked the soda, but I didn't like the process of making it. And so I was actually at Costco the other day, and I saw these guys on for like 25 bucks. And I said, you know, that's perfect. This is exactly what we're going to need. So the nozzle itself is actually above the bottom, and that allows for the water kefir grains to accumulate in the bottom without coming out of the nozzle. The nozzle itself also fits a pop-top bottle perfectly. And so it's really easy to turn this valve, toggle this valve, until it's 50% full right here. And then in this jar over here, we put the tea in once it's cold, which will basically fill the bottle the other 50%. And when you're filling these bottles, you only really want to go to the shoulder of the bottle. You don't want to go any higher than that, otherwise you are at risk of getting an exploded bottle. So this is where all the magic happens. And so these are tiny little, they're called grains, and they're water kefir grains. And they're a little different than milk kefir grains in that they like to live in water. And you end up with a probiotic substance that's kind of like kombucha, but it doesn't taste like vinegar. It's super clean. It tastes just like when you drink a can of Coke or something like that, you don't get a vinegar aftertaste from Coke, and you don't get a vinegar aftertaste from water kefir either. And so the way that we propagate these is for every liter of water that I put in here, we add in a 1/4 cup of sugar. Now it's really important that the water is not chlorinated, because if it's chlorinated, it's going to kill the microbes. And so the sugar basically feeds the symbiotic microbiology in those grains, and over time the grains grow. And so you can actually sell the grains. You could start a water kefir grain business if you wanted. You can give away to friends, and eventually we'll have so many in here that we'll have to actually give them away or sell them to somebody. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to add some water, and I'm going to add some sugar, and then this is going to be ready to go for tomorrow. By the time we finish making all of our soda, I'll probably have drawn this down to like 9/10 of the way. And so we'll have to basically add 4 or 5 liters of water back into the system. And for every liter, like I said, we add a 1/4 cup of sugar. And so that kind of describes the process. tomorrow morning when that tea is cold, I'll put it in here and I'll take you through the whole process of making the soda. And then once we fill the bottles, I'll show you how we kind of keep them on the counter for 3 days, and then once they've kind of been kept there for 3 days, then we move them into the fridge. If you keep them on the counter too long and you put too much sugar in there, your bottles will explode. It's just like beer or any kind of carbonated beverage. The microbes will continue to put out carbon dioxide until they blow the vessel up. So just be wary of that. All right, so we're gonna add our ingredients now. I'm gonna add, not all of them, probably 50 to 60% of these berries. This is what gives it that orange flavor and all the antioxidants. So I know I have another bag of these in the freezer outside, so it'll be enough for another recipe. And like I said, you can make whatever flavor you want. This is just the one that I've been kind of working with. And then I'm going to add all these leaves. Again, you can look up sea buckthorn leaves in terms of what they're good for. And then to keep the sweetness up, when the sugar gets consumed with the carbonation process, I add stevia leaf. And so we just buy this from Organic Matters in bulk. And it's pretty powerful stuff. You don't need a lot, but for this recipe I'm going to use 2 tablespoons. And so that will maintain the sweetness. And then I'm going to add about 250 grams of honey. I'm going to add that in as I'm boiling the water because then it will dissolve really well. You could use sugar too, and the trick is not to use too much because you've got that stevia for sweetness. This is just to kind of fuel the carbonation. Okay. And then I'll show you how easy it is to feed your water kefir as well. Alright, so to feed our water kefir, we're on well water, so we don't have the risk of chlorination. If you're in the city, you're going to want to make sure that you use non-chlorinated water. And some cities actually use chloramine, and so chloramine is not very, it's harder to smell than chlorine, and it's actually chlorine and ammonia. It's a little bit more, it's a little bit harder to get out of the water, and it's harder to notice. A lot of cities are moving to it because it lasts longer, and it's not very good for you. You don't really want to be drinking it. So I literally just take a 1/4 cup of sugar, and we use organic fair trade cane sugar. I'm going to stick it in there, and I'm going to mix it up. And sometimes it works a little better if the water is a bit warmer. It just seems to dissolve a bit better. Okay, once it's nice and mixed, there's still a bit there that's not dissolved, so I might have to do that again, but I'm going to take it over here. Just take off the lid here. I'm just going to dump this sugar and water into the water kefir. And in the same way that in your bottle things are getting carbonated, as you're feeding these water kefir grains, they're going to emit carbon dioxide. So you want to make sure that whatever lid you put on here is not going to block the vessel from releasing that carbon dioxide. It's really important. So you can see I got a bit more sugar in there, so I'm just going to add a bit more water after the video and make sure that those sugar grains get inside there. And now this is ready to go for tomorrow. I've got more than enough water kefir for the tea that I'm making. The tea is going to end up in here. Then we're going to blend it 50-50, let it sit on the counter for 3 days, and then we're good to go. Thanks so much, guys. I'll check in with you in the morning and we'll finish the process off. Alright, so today we're going to add the tea into the other container that we talked about yesterday, but first what we got to do is we've got to take the tea out of the pot that we brewed it in. We're going to strain out the leaves and the berries, and because the berries still might be intact, we're going to actually crush the berries to get the juice out of them. And then once we've got those strained, then we're going to, see if I can move, yeah, it's in the shot there. We're going to move all the liquid into this container here, and then it'll be ready for filling. So I'll show how that works. Okay, so just a simple strainer. We've got a lot of tea here, so I'm going to do it in 2 goes. So you see it's starting to strain it out, and you can see how the berries are still intact there, and so we'll actually physically crush them to get the juices and stuff released from them. So I'm going to pour this into that container, and then we'll strain out the rest. Give you another. Yeah. Okay. Okay, that wasn't too bad. We'll strain the last of this stuff off now. Now, in order to get the berries out, what I do is I just take a wooden spoon and I'm just going to crush this, just like this. And you'll see here that just kind of looks like this mash of leaves and berries. And so there's really good stuff in there that I want to get out. And so now what I'm going to do is put it back into the pan. And I'm just going to pour this liquid through to try and strain it. Just making a complete mess right now. Let's put this towel here. You know it's real because that's not getting edited out. Alright. I'll clean all that up later. So I'm going to try doing that again. I'm just going to mix things around. Just want to get all those antioxidants and nutrients out of those berries. They're so valuable. Okay, and then I'm going to pour it in again. And then I have a suspicion that it's going to be easier to pour out of this pot here, so I'm going to pour it back one more time. And then I'm just going to use the spoon to help it through the sieve. Okay. And I'm going to let the sieve sit there for a couple of hours. I'm sure we'll get a bit more out, which we can use later. Okay, now we'll put the rest in here. We're just going to pour it in carefully. You can really see how orange that is. That's where all the sea buckthorn berries are, right there. Totally changed the color of it. Alright. Okay, so now we've got this vessel here. We're going to move this vessel up to the top here, and it's pretty full. And so we're not quite 50-50 on the 2 levels, and so we'll use that as a guide with regards to how much of each we put in. So it's not going to be quite a 50-50 ratio. We could actually bring this up to 50-50 if we wanted. That's usually what the recipe calls for, but this liquid has all the right microbes in it, and so it's going to do a really good job of fermenting the soda regardless. So I'm going to get a couple bottles so that I can show you how this works. Alright, so we're a really big fan of these pop-top bottles. I find these ones a bit small. This is like 1 beverage, and so we actually have the half-liter ones as well, which are great, and we think we even have some of the 1-liter ones. These will literally last, you know, as long as you want them to last. As long as they don't explode, and they can explode if you let them ferment too long. So once you buy them once, then you're good for a really long period of time. And so we just have, 50 of these bottles, and it works really well. So now what we're going to do is we're going to fill them. So I'll show you how we do that. So you can see how easy this bottle is to fill. We're going to just put it up to the nozzle right here. We're going to go to 40% on the first, right here. and it happens way quicker than you think. As soon as you're at 40%, then we're going to come over to the sea buckthorn tea, and we're going to fill it the rest of the way. And then once it's at the shoulder, then all you do is you put the pop top on, seal it, and now that's going to sit on the counter for 3 days, at which point we'll be ready to drink it because it is nice and effervescent and ready to go. And so every week we do this once or twice a week depending on how much soda we're drinking, and it works out really well. Hopefully you found that video useful. We've really found making sodas to be a lot of fun. The kids love it. It's a great way to get probiotics into their body. And then we can also put other medicinal type plants into it as well. And so it kind of is a win-win-win. It's really inexpensive to make, and we have a lot of fun doing it. I'm just going to put a shout out to the Light Cellar in Calgary. Malcolm Saunders owns that company. If you're interested in learning more about elixirs and probiotic sodas and things like that, I highly recommend you go check them out. I'll put the Light Cellar link in the show notes below. They offer courses and all the superfoods you could ever possibly want, as well as you can get cultures from them as well. So if you're looking for this water kefir or kombucha mothers, you can go to the Light Cellar and they'll hook you up. Okay guys, see you guys in the next video.